All right, CC, Dak had a great, Week 17 game. What do you want to see from him now as they get ready to face Seattle?
Man, it's about winning. It's not about pictures. It's not about being pretty. It's about winning and trying to play winning football. We know that Ezekiel Elliott's going to be a huge part, but for Dak, it's been a tale of two seasons. Before he had Amari Cooper, I think 180 yards passing. After that, around 70 more yards passing. So that's the Dak that we need to be able to see. They have to be throwing the ball for around 250 yards, and they don't want to throw the ball more than 40 times. So how can I have a limited number of attempts and still maximize that? Because I need those big plays that I talked about. And based on the way Seattle plays, they typically play one high safety, either cover 3 or cover 1. A lot of that is a dream for a wide receiver, because typically you're going to get free access off the ball and be able to penetrate into the defense. Now, Seattle's defense has been playing much better, but to me, Dallas and their passing game going into the season, what was the question mark? Now we're in the playoffs. It is no different. They've practiced, they've improved on it, but now can they do it under the gun? That will be, if the Dallas Cowboys are going to win, they will not win by not throwing the ball and being efficient at throwing it.
I think I know your answer to this because you and I talked when you weren't here, but the audience hasn't heard your opinion on what happened in Week 17, so I just want to go back to that for a moment. I've been saying it was as meaningful of a, quote, meaningless game as I've seen, because the question mark has been Dak. He didn't have any all-pro offensive lineman, didn't have his all-pro running back, and the defense did not play well, and he went up and down the field. All of a sudden, Blake Jarwin is now something I guess Seattle has to pay some attention to. He makes a 4th and 15 throw to potentially tie the game, and then the 2-point conversion play where he extends the play to end up winning the game. If momentum's a real thing in sports, Dak finally, for really the first time all year, has it at the exact right time. What was your takeaway from if Dak gained anything on this past Sunday playing the Giants?
Right. I must have watched a different game, because I didn't leave there thinking, wow, Dallas is going to be ready to roll into the playoffs. No, because unless they're getting the ball to Amari Cooper, Dak is doing what a quarterback's supposed to do. And there's a reason why they had him out there. It wasn't because they had a lot of faith in him.
It was because he needed the reps and needed absolutely.
Yeah, so momentum is real in sports, but some momentum is just false momentum. All right? I don't believe as a team without the offensive line, that offensive line has not played great. So what tells me that they're going to play great? And I don't think there's going to be a carryover, because you know something? If Dallas loses this game, what are we going to say? We don't care nothing about week number 17. It's about winning.
Of course. No, the point that I'm making is that the big question mark on the team all year has been lack of explosive plays. And the only reason the Cowboys are in the tier they're in instead of up a tier is because of questions with their passing attack. We know how good the defense can be. We know when healthy how good the offensive line can be. And Zeke has been a superstar from the first moment we saw him in the NFL. Right. It's been about questions about Dak, and in the beginning of the year, did they have a number 1 receiver? And then now his relationship and getting on the same page with Amari. I think that even if it's false belief, throwing for 380 yards and 4 touchdowns in your final regular season game is a step where he can say to himself, man, like, what did I do in the last playoff game? I was down double digits to Aaron Rodgers, and I orchestrated a comeback. Now, they couldn't finish it off, but it went field goal, field goal, field goal to end that game. I thought Dak played very well the last time he was in this position, a playoff game at home where they are a slight favorite or a favorite. And so for the Cowboys, I think they can play with Seattle as long as the Dak Prescott-Russell Wilson matchup isn't a blowout. As long as, I don't think Dak needs to outplay Russell Wilson, but if he can keep that close, if that can be a lot of 10-9 rounds, then I think Zeke and the defense and the fact that they're at home can tilt this game in Dallas's favor. The problem for Dallas is I know Russell Wilson's going to play well. I can't remember the last time Russell Wilson didn't show up and play well in a playoff game. I know that if Seattle can't run the football, which they might have trouble against the Dallas front, Russell Wilson will find a way to make plays.
And the flip isn't necessarily true
I don't know that's true with Dak. I think Dak can have the confidence based on what he did in his most recent picture.
Yeah.
But that's my concern for the Cowboys in this football.
The reason why I don't give it that amount of credit is because there's no pressure. You're in the playoffs. The coaches decide these guys can't play. All right, I'm going to play. I'm still a young player. Like, everything is still based on winning. So for me, Dak Prescott we've seen these big games by Dak. And then what happened? The next week, what?
Regress.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
So that's on the board to be able to happen in this game. They have to be able to generate some big plays. Now, they have changed the offense up. They do have the tight end involved. Let's see if we can do that in the playoffs. Dak can't take sacks. All right? So when you tell me Dak is not getting sacked, he's getting rid of the football compared to getting sacks, then I'll be like, okay, that's real momentum because he's learned. Because we know if you get sacked in the NFL, the chance of you scoring points are practically zero. So you can't give away series by getting sacked. So when Dak improves in that area, and then Cris Carter maybe will be on that bandwagon.
And then one note on the Dak taking sacks. Yes, the offensive line hasn't played up to the level of a couple years ago, but you sent me yesterday, I thought, a really interesting number, which is their Pro Football Focus sent out a stat about the most sacked quarterbacks where they did it to themselves, essentially, where the sack was on the quarterback. 15 of Dak's sacks this year were on him, according to Pro Football Focus. That's number one in football. Now, that still means there's about another 35 times he's been sacked that wasn't on him, but that's one a game. That's one drive a game that is totally stalled, or your opportunity to score a touchdown or points is almost entirely removed because Dak's either holding on the ball too long or rolling into pressure instead of rolling away from pressure.
Well, the Cowboys. Coach, it's a big stage for Deshaun Watson. Do you think this Texan team is getting the respect that it deserves after this season it had from around the league?
Well, the thing about respect, you remember the Mae West quote, if you have to tell people you're a lady, then you're not. And then if you ever have to ask for respect, then it's probably, not merited. But in this case, I think they do merit respect. Now, they made it a little bit tougher on themselves by starting as big in the hole as they did, and then really lost 2 out of the last 4 games. But they've also got to go into this game, and they've got to establish that it's not going to be T.Y. Hilton's place. It's not going to be Andrew Luck being the best quarterback on the field. They've got to find a way to slow down that offense. They've got to do things differently than they have in the first 2 games in order for them to take that jump. And for Deshaun Watson, I think that he's going to produce a lot of things on the ground, but one thing he can't do is continue this sack trend that he's had all season. And look, saying that at this point in the playoffs, it's probably going to continue the way it has. But those sacks at some point, that's going to be the difference in the game, and he's got to make good decisions.
You mentioned T.Y. Hilton. People should understand there's basically no receiver in the NFL that plays better in a building than T.Y. Hilton does in Houston. 7 games in that stadium, NRG Stadium in Houston. 133 yards per game in those 7. The last 2 times he's played there, 199, 9 catches for 199, 5 catches for 175, and 2 scores. One of those games was last year when the team wasn't good and Luck wasn't playing. He still showed up and dominated. They won in that building the year they only won 2 football games. Like, the Colts have always had success against the Houston Texans, and T.Y. Hilton's been dominant against the Houston Texans. You mentioned the Deshaun Watson and the sacks, and we talked about earlier in the show, Dak Prescott, 15 of his sacks were on him, according to Pro Football Focus. 14 of Deshaun's were on him, not on the offensive line. But that also means, the guy was sacked 62 times. So that means 48 times this year there was nothing that quarterback could do, and it was either breakdown in protection or overpowering defensive linemen on offensive line. That's been the issue with the Texans all year, is their biggest weakness, the place they have the least money, the least draft capital, is their offensive line. And the Colts have shown you over these last 10 games, if you have a glaring weakness up front like that, they don't need Andrew Luck to be dominant to beat you. They can beat you defensively. They got the #1 scoring defense in football over the last 10 weeks. They can beat you that way as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I want to watch in this game. T.Y. Hilton, the stats and stuff are great. We know about DeAndre Hopkins, his lack of notoriety, now starting to get that with the best sure-handed receiver that we have. Who are the others? Who are going to be the other players, either the tight ends or coming out of the backfield to be able to help these players? Because whichever offense is able to help that star receiver, because I don't believe those star receivers, like Coach Mangini said, they're going to try to take those guys out of the game. So which other group can help support their superstar receiver? And I believe that Deshaun, his legs are going to be more important in this game, because I wouldn't sit back there in this game. This is not college. This is not Alabama. This is the NFL, and the more times you get sacks, the more drives are killed, the more possessions are lost, and then you start to feel the pressure So once you get through that first half, the second half of the playoff games are totally different because you got 30 minutes and you get ready to go on vacation. So those adjustments at halftime become more critical. So for me, if I'm Deshaun, right now it's about winning games and moving the sticks. And I would try to concentrate a little bit more on utilizing my legs in the playoffs because that part NFL defenses are not ready for, and there's nothing more frustrating.
And with Pro Football Focus, I respect the work that they do, but it's not the be-all, end-all.
It's not a science.
And I'm sure if we talk to the coaching staff, they'd probably have a different number in terms of how many sacks he was responsible for versus the Pro Football Focus number. And besides that, there are times that the O-line is going to break down, but quarterbacks will see that and get rid of the ball. You can't just say, oh, it's his fault, I'm going to eat this sack, or I'm going to try to extend this play when there's no chance to actually.
The force multipliers do something even with those negative plays.
And it's the same thing with quarterbacks. Sometimes they throw a bad ball, and the good receivers, they knock it down so it can't get intercepted, and everybody plays a role in that. Now, Deshaun Watson, to me, was one of the most unique guys that I've ever seen with the football in his hand in college. And I remember wondering how it was going to fit, how it was going to work in the NFL, but I knew what a problem he was going to create with his feet. And I think that's got to be a big part of what he does this weekend.
And where Deshaun deserves an enormous amount of credit is last year during that outstanding run that he had. He did it despite turning the ball over nearly every game. The first 6 games of this year, he had an interception or 2 in every single game of the first 6. In the last 10, 9 of 10 games, no picks. So maybe one of the reasons that the sack numbers are as high is he's not taking chances with the football. He is eating it more often. Now, you'd like it to be neither a sack nor an interception. But the one bugaboo with him, even during his great run last season, was a lot of turnovers. I think led the league in interceptions in that stretch, just had overwhelming touchdown numbers. During this stretch of great football by the Texans, he has taken care of the ball as well as any quarterback in the NFL. He's going to have to do that this week against the Colts, because one thing I don't think we can rely on for the Texans is some huge defensive plays up front, which is what they have made their money on defensively, because the Colts have been the best offensive line in the league the last 10 games of the year, only giving up 8 sacks.
See, there's no doubt he can play. There's no doubt if the play breaks down, he can run. We all know that. But what do you say to a guy who's still a relatively young quarterback? He did miss a lot of last season, getting ready for a big stage, his first playoff game. There's a lot of pressure around Houston for him to sort of save this team and get them back into the real competitive talk of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's really hard for guys who come from college and are dual threat quarterbacks, because once they get into the league, they hear what the voices are saying. Oh, he'll never be a pocket. So what they do is they stay in the pocket too much. Dak Prescott is an example of that. Deshaun is an example of that. So in trying to become a pocket quarterback, they become stationary compared to being athletic. It's the playoffs. It's about winning, and I'm sure the coaching staffs will make sure that the young quarterbacks know that. Use your legs when you get an opportunity, because in these playoff games, man, additional first down, an additional drive, you get another look at that defense. It becomes so important to stay on the field. When I've experienced difficult defenses in the playoffs, it's because we couldn't move the chains. We couldn't get any type of momentum. So watch team momentum. Watch teams that are able to generate first downs to keep their momentum going, and which quarterback can make them little extra plays to give them that extra chance. I believe is going to be a huge storyline Saturday and Sunday.
And with Donovan McNabb, what it became later in his career is he would run the ball on 3rd down in 2 minutes in the red zone. In those critical situations, that's where he was more likely to run the ball. And I'd say the same thing with any quarterback that has that ability. If you're going to take those chances, take it in the most critical situations. They use that skill set in the red zone, in 2 minutes, on 3rd down, as opposed to 1st and 10 where maybe you're taking a hit or taking a sack, and when it's, it's not quite the same return on investment.
But highest leverage situations.
Highest leverage situations, default to that if that's what it calls for, yeah.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.